welcome to the LifePro podcast, where today I have the pleasure of having Kyra Nenz, who is a whole being coach. Today's topic is flow state. But before we get into that, how are you, Kyra?
I'm good. Flowing, very flowy.
Excited to have you on the show.
Thanks
Flow
for having
state
me.
is something I always aspire to get to. And sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But before we get into that, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and your journey in life?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kyra, as you said. It's pronounced with a Y. I always joke that is because I have been asking why a lot in my life. My parents kind of signed up for this without knowing, I guess. I'm from Germany originally. I live in LA now. Um, my background is I used to be in marketing. I was creative marketing director at Netflix and Bumble. And yeah, have since the beginning of this year founded my own whole being coaching studio where I help people to get into flow. And yeah, I'm very excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
We're excited to have you as well. And can you get into can you help us define what is flow state? What does that mean to you?
I guess it's a little bit different than what people would probably think it is for me, because I think people very much think about flow state as something like you sit down and you're like getting into a task and then you're just so immersed in the task that you'll kind of lose track of time and everything around you. But it's a very momentary thing. For me, flow state is more an approach to life, and it is something that you can actually really achieve to live in flow with life. But therefore, you need to understand that what is flow? Like when we're talking about flow, what is this even? Like, is this something that I create or is this something that I tune into? And that is actually something. So for me, there is a constant flow in life. Like everything, if you think about everything in this world, is energy, right? So this energy is constantly moving. This is the flow. For us to get into flow state is really to tune into and be more susceptible. Is that the English word?
Yeah,
I guess so.
susceptible.
Yeah, and yeah, receptive to it and to understand. Okay, so this flow, this living kind of entity is moving. Where is it taking me? And allowing it to move me. So it's not necessarily something that I create. It's more like something that I tune into and that I surrender to. So that as like a very broad thing. So for me, it's not a momentary thing, but it's a living and flow with life is more an approach to life. It's really a state, but at the same time, it's a practice. So it's something that you, yeah, experience, but at the same time, also something you need to practice to stay in that experience, to not kind of get out of the flow.
Yeah, so when I think of flow, I think of like the zone, like being in the zone. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big basketball fan. So when it comes to sports, like being in the zone is when you're at your utmost peak performance. Athletes and basketball players describe that the hoop just seems larger. It's everything just
Mm-hmm.
comes to you much easier, and you know where to go before it even happens. Everything, life just kind of is in slow motion, and it makes it easy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So in flow state, we make better decisions, we think clearer, and able to tackle problems without any stress. And that's how I
Mm-hmm.
define flow state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would imagine you help a lot of your clients achieve flow state and stay in flow state. What are some of the
Mm-hmm.
tools and exercises, methods that you use to help people obtain this state of flow?
Well, I would say one of the essentials is getting in touch with your emotions, because that is the energy in motion. That's is what how we experience life. We sense it. We sense things before. Like the thinking mind is kind of always just like catching up to the present moment. It's like the present moment happened, and the thinking mind tries to make reason of like sense of it. And it's
Mm.
like, oh, okay, so what do we do from here? Being in flow and being really in the present moment. This is like being so rooted in the now that you are able to respond to the present moment from the present moment almost. And so how do we get into the present moment? For many people, it's like, oh, you meditate or you like, there's a lot of practices, right? But I would say the practice that I've been practicing since 35 years is feeling my feelings. It's if you're in touch with your emotions, that when you can feel that energy in motion, that's where you kind of follow it. Because essentially, if we say the like following the flow, or like going with the flow. It's, you know, things, it's everything is like seamlessly, fluidly kind of like moving without you having to like apply a lot of effort.
Right.
So how do I get there? And I need to feel where the flow is taking me. And how do I feel that? Like, how do I get in touch with that energy that is in motion? And is literally, I need to get in touch with that energy in motion moving through me. Because the flow, if it feels so good and effortless and easy, right?
Right.
Well, then you need to follow what feels effortless, what feels easy. And not, and this is where the thinking mind often comes into the thinking, the mind tries to make like sense of things and has a very particular, it's limited in its ability to grasp our experience and tries to make sense. And often it's very much rooted in past like stories and beliefs that it tries to protect us and tries to keep us safe, tries to keep us in the familiar, in the same, repeating the same thing. The flow, like if you tune out of the mind, if you really get into your emotions, it's suddenly the world is broad, it's limitless, and you're like, okay, so where is this taking me? What does feel good? Not necessarily what my mind is like, oh, I think we shouldn't do this, we should probably do this, this is like makes sense, this is the linear. The mind operates in a linearity. So it's like from A, I'll do B, I do C, I do D, like kind of that. And it creates alignment by like making things linear.
Right.
But the flow isn't linear. The flow is aligned, but it's like a very flowy, obviously very fluid stream that is not necessarily linear. So it's really by tuning into your emotions and allowing to feel, how do I feel about this in this very moment? Like really getting in touch with that and like developing that honesty with yourself, and also that emotional authority of like understanding, okay, so this is right now, whatever's present feels this or that way. Okay, I can just feel that, experience that without reacting, without that emotion letting me like taking me to like, oh my God, I need to, whatever, let's say your boss is yelling at you, and this creates a strong emotion within you, right? And then the reactive would be like maybe yelling back or snapping back in whatever way.
Mm-hmm.
But like really tuning into, hold on, I'm experiencing this, there's emotion, energy and motion moving in me. But now from that, if you can stay with that present for a moment and really like, okay, that is energy, it's moving. And then develop that, and what I would call the responsibility, the ability to respond to your emotions, not letting them just like taking you somewhere where the reactive, the past is very much kind of driving you, but allowing you to make that conscious decision of like, okay, I feel that, but actually, how do I want to feel? And what do I need to do to get into that feeling? Because if you want to feel at peace, let's say, with your boss, snapping back is probably not going to get you there.
Right.
So developing that ability to feel, to be with your emotions, being present, it's unfortunately something that people like have a very complex relationship to emotions, and very scary because they're energy in motion. It's like you're kind of almost surrendering. You need to surrender to them. It's like, whoa, what is this? This is, I feel like out of control. And to soften into that and be like, okay, there's energy moving. And then becoming curious about it. What does it tell me also? Like energy in emotions is information. It tells you, like, it's like, hey, here, I want to tell you something about this very thing that you're doing or the situation, to learn something, to see something about yourself. But if we are trying to run away from it or repress it, or very many ways how to get out of it instead of getting into it. So leaning into the emotion is how we can get into the flow.
Right. So would you characterize, putting aside your mind and listening to your gut or your intuition is will help us get to the flow state?
Yes. And I mean, this then would probably for many people bring up, how do I get in touch with my intuition? What is my gut? What is my mind? This is like for many people very hard to distinguish, because we've been just like very in a world conditioned where the logic, like the right brain, logic, sense, everything, like sense making is so dominant, and is like almost like a gut feeling. When do you like, there's for many decisions, it's like, yeah, gut feeling is not necessarily the driver, or not allowed as that. It's like, no, I need to first go through all the options, research, maybe we need to make a list, A, B, blah. It's a very much of and rooted in uncertainty. And there is where the mind yet again kind of comes in, because the mind in itself, it has limited ability to grasp a situation. It draws from past knowledge,
Right.
but the intuitive, like the intuitive knowing, draws from the like infinite kind of like, yeah, it has a database that we can't even grasp. It's really then for us to trust it, and that is where people very much struggle with, because it comes down to, do you trust that sensation? Do you trust that thing? Intuition, for me, if people ask me sometimes, what is intuition, like how do you know like what is intuitive, often would say that one of the first things is it never makes sense. It's like you think, like it tells you, there's maybe for some people it's a voice. For me, my intuition is speaking. So and it tells me something, and I'm like, what the, how, from here where I am, and you give me this like piece of information, and I have zero idea how to get from here to there. But this is the intuition. Is like, I know this. I give you this glimpse into the future. The how will figure itself out. This is what will unfold. I just need you to trust into that piece of information that I'm giving you. And that is like the trust into that, something that you know without knowing how you know. And that is for many people who have been very, very long living very much from this like right brain, from the mind. It feels like so scary, like very, very scary to do that. It's like, because I also think wherever I am in my life right now is because I controlled everything so good, because my mind, all the decisions, all the thinking got me there. But here's where I would challenge people, and like, is it true? Or is it maybe because there were all these moments where you did that one little thing that didn't make sense, that actually got you where you are?
Yeah. No, I believe that. And further to your point, I've had many situations in my life where my intuition says one thing, but it doesn't make sense. My brain, like you said, my brain cannot compute that as, why is that a viable course of action? But when you look at it, reflect on it, a lot of times your intuition is correct. And
I
there's
would say
a way to
it's
see that.
always correct. The
It's
question
always
is, from what point are you looking at it? Because if you think that intuition will always lead you to feel good, happy land,
right.
well, that's not it. Intuition is guiding you to the experiences that you need to have to really evolve into your highest expression. This will mean it will lead you to situations and moments where you feel great discomfort, but it's not the, I think Young Pueblo, the author, says intuition will ask you to do really like courageous things, but it will never ask you to be reckless, and never ask you to harm yourself. So to really understand, yes, it's when you feel the fear, that's where you need to look at. That's where you need to go. That's if there's like, it's psychological fear. Obviously, we're not talking about running, like jumping off a cliff, but this is where people, you know what your intuition is deep down. The question is more, do you trust it, and developing that relationship with it, and can start small. Like, this is what I sometimes tell people, like, you don't need to obviously like make a big life decision based on your intuition right now, but let's say you are in a restaurant and you normally like always like to eat pizza. It's like, it maybe also the restaurant, the pizza there, you just like love it, great. But you maybe at that point get like this intuitive hit of, maybe I feel like having spaghetti pasta today. Just trust that for a moment and see what that comes from that you maybe have a conversation with the waiter that is like very inspiring, that you didn't know, because you suddenly talk about kind of pasta that is, or you just like realize, oh my god, I haven't had pasta in such a long time, I didn't even know how much I love it. So trusting, building that relationship with tiny steps, and then you start to like, okay, that led to something good. But the reflection is the important part. You need to kind of reaffirm yourself in that process of, okay, so I trusted my intuition, this is what came out of it, to kind of fuel that, and like, okay, no, this is what happens when I trust my intuition, and really like build that relationship. Because if you don't do that, then it will always stay like, I don't know, like very woo-hoo, scary thing. So
Right.
it's building that and seeing like, oh no, actually we are a team. And it's always helping me and guiding me into situations where I can really grow and be like afterwards, like, wow, I didn't know that I needed that, but I actually really needed that. I needed that experience. I needed that insight that came from it, because that is what intuition in the end is always like trying to get us, like to for us to evolve, to see more of us, see all of who we are
Right.
and all what's possible, because that's where it takes us, right? Is in into the there's infinite possibilities, and the intuition operates in that realm. So let's go there. That's kind of intuition is like, hey, there's like something bigger waiting for you. Your mind cannot see that because it operates in that limited like sphere. But to trust it, that's kind of the practice.
100% agree with that. Um, I would say the nemesis to flow state is stress.
Mm-hmm.
Stress provides an ability for us to think clearly, provides a fog in our brains
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
we're, reluctant to make the decisions we want to make, and we have come from a place of fear,
Mm-hmm.
um, and fail to like move forward. How do we, I know being present is a valuable tool, but and feeling those emotions, like you said, but life is more complicated than that. There's where things are thrown at us, especially the older we get and have families and careers, and the way that the world is evolving. I feel like everybody has more stress and everybody's more worried about the future, uh,
Mm.
political landscapes, wars, and such, financial situations. How do we subside? How do we control this stress? How do we remove it from our lives?
Well, there's obviously many tools, but I would say it all comes down to, and people will not necessarily like that to hear that, but it all comes down to coming back into the present moment. Because fear is something that we create. It's not real. It's something we create, and that comes from thinking. So in this moment right now where you and I are, I'm sure you have also things on your mind and there's stuff like stress in your life happening. But in this very moment, if you really are here, is there anything right now missing, lacking, any problem in this very moment right now? Do you have a problem right now?
I wasn't thinking about it until you brought it up, but the fact that you brought it up, I'm not, yeah, before our conversation, yeah, I had a ton of problems today that arise,
But
but
in this moment,
in
do
this
you
moment,
have
I
them?
did not. No, did not.
Yeah. And this is the thing. In the very moment, and if you tune into that, in the very moment, there is only the now. Everything else is also created by the mind. I know this is like
Yeah,
for some people maybe like not very like easy to grasp, but the mind needs the past and the future to even exist. So we travel back into memories, the past, like, oh, what can be, because that's where it draws its information from, right? To kind of project it into the future, to generate that, what I said, this kind of feeling of I know what's going to happen. Like it creates a story. That's why I always been so fascinated. We are the greatest storytellers of our time. Our mind is creating all these stories, but they're always based on the past. It takes the past, draws like, oh, I know this. This is similar to this or that, what I've experienced, and like projects it into the future. So all the stress, all these things that we experience are essentially coming from because we are in the mind, because we take like we think so much, we use our mind not in its actual role. The mind is an exceptionally potent executional tool, but it's not the driver. That's where it's just like putting it put in a position where it can't thrive because it tries to like from all the like where should it's insecure and it doesn't know what to do. Like I have only the past, I don't know what like the future, how to it doesn't know. It's like that's where it comes to the limits of its own yeah toolkit. So this is why, like, if you come back into the present moment, and this is where I would say there's so many techniques. There's breath work, there's meditation, there's yoga, but even one conscious breath a day, where you like say, okay, hold on, I'm gonna take one breath consciously, one inhale, one exhale. That is already getting you into the present moment, and to start implementing more of these practices, because they're also, if I tell someone, hey, just do yoga, it doesn't feel right for them. Like there's you can basically make anything a mindfulness practice. You can eat your food, your lunch, and say, I'm going to be really present. I'm going to turn off the music. I'm going to really sit here and really make myself aware of, I'm eating right now this food that comes from the earth, that was watered, the sun has grown that food, this is living, I'm going to eat that. That living being now becomes part of my body. So you can make anything a mindfulness practice, but to understand that this is the goal. Like the goal is to get back into the present moment, because in the present moment, all these fears and worries, they do not exist. It's literally, it's a construct of the mind that creates it, and it feels so real. That's just like where I want to say, it's like, not that people are like, yeah, but this is really real, like I really have these, like really my kids, I need to get them from school, and this is like really like tight schedule. Yeah, but just to understand, it's always a story. It's always the mind creating a story.
Yeah. It's all perspective, right? It's like,
Exactly. And
but
that is our power, to choose that, to
yeah,
choose our perspective. Even when people say, I don't have time, you don't make time.
right. Absolutely right.
It's to see that this is our power. And that's what many people don't realize, and where so many people walk around very disempowered, to not see, like, I am the one who gets to choose my perspective on this situation. My perspective is mine. Your perspective is yours. Nobody can give you a perspective, or people can give you a perspective, but you are the one who has to say, okay, I'm taking it.
Yeah.
So what kind of perspectives have we unconsciously or in the past taken and now embody them, that actually are not serving us?
So I have an interesting question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Do you feel like you have to be happy to enter flow state, or you enter flow state to be happy?
I would not, like, the word happiness doesn't resonate with me at all. I would say you have to feel to get into flow state, whatever feeling it is.
Okay.
It's not about the feeling of, like, people, this is also a construct when we think about, we want to be happy all the time. Really? Do we? Think about, you would be happy every single moment of your life, every day. Would you even at some point still feel happy? Or would it be like, this is like eating pasta every damn day, like your favorite dish? Eat it for like a month and then tell me if it's still your favorite dish.
Right.
We need contrast. So, and that's also our human nature. We have this big spectrum of emotions, and all of them are valid and needed. They all like have a role. Like anger can really propel us forward. It can show us somebody has crossed our boundary. Something really feels like somebody is in our space in some way. So it's not about the emotion, like getting into happiness. I would say, if you are allowing yourself to feel the emotion, whatever it is, that's the moment when this energetic charge that you're feeling also subsides. This is when you're like, okay, let's lean into the fear.
Right.
Let's say fear is something. Let's lean into it. Because as long as you're running away from it, what happens? It just gets stronger. It's just like, it kind of chases you, or repressing. And also think about the amount of energy that you have to kind of use to repress it. So you have energy, like say fear energy, a lot of it. So to repress it, I need more energy for it not to come up. So this is whole lot of energy also that I'm wasting. It's like leaky energy that we're using. And so I would say it's more of a feeling of ease and grace that you get into. Like everything, every moment, even feeling fear at some point is something that becomes something that you experience with more ease. And you also kind of, you get out of it way faster. It's not I'm happy all the time, but I'm at ease with any situation. So even if there's something happening that will activate me with fear or anger or whatever, I'm in the driver's seat to actually, like, okay, I see this, I feel this, I'm allowing that energy to move. Oh, and there it's gone. So it's us holding on to or repressing what people call negative emotions. that actually causes all the trouble, all the like the stress that we experience. I don't like, for me, emotions, I don't call them negative or positive, because think about it, if you call something negative, like, do you want to feel that? Probably not.
Right.
So to see them more as what I do is expansive and contracting. So joy, happiness, like this is all where you feel like your heart's wide open, like this is expanding you. And then there's emotions like sadness or fear, where it's like more like protecting yourself and kind of draw yourself more inward. So that already helps me to kind of neutralize this. Oh, this is the good and this is the bad, and I don't want to feel this and I only want to feel that. Because like trying to feel something, like always feel happy, is not only unrealistic, but it's also the very thing that is causing us, our life, to be so unease, so much stress to always be happy.
No, and I only bring up that question because, when I'm happy, or higher levels of serotonin, if you want to call it that, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to make better decisions. I tend to be able to think a little bit clearly. So I do see a correlation between being happy and flow state. That's why I bring it up.
It's it's I would say, yeah, but like if you like, and here it comes, let's first of all, how many emotions are people even able to identify? You call it happy, but maybe it's not even happiness, because there's actually, I think it's 87, Brene Brown has identified, I think 87 different kinds of emotions. Most people are able to only name like happiness, sadness, fear, anger, I think disgust maybe, but that's kind of where it ends. But
Yeah.
there's so much more nuanced. So what you might call happy might very well be actually something that is like being at ease, at peace, something that feels like an inner, like a serenity,
Yeah.
like a calmness, clarity, all these like, and this is what it is. It's like you feeling very clear, and this is present, that being in the present moment. It's like really being just here. And yes, absolutely. Like from that place, this is where you then make those decisions that don't come from that place of fear.
Yeah. And acceptance, right? Acceptance
Yeah.
of your situation is part of entering flow state.
I would say it's the essence of it all is receiving. It's I always call being, the very fact of like being as a practice is the practice of active receiving. So you really allow the moment to be.
Yeah.
And you're staying open to whatever is present within you, happening around you. Just allow yourself to receive it. So it's something very especially for men, sometimes can be maybe not the most natural thing to surrender and really allow things, because it's just like from an energetic perspective, if there's more like the yeah, doing, and more practical and assertive, and like let's do something about it. So it's a more yeah, in essence, a little bit more of a feminine energetic trait, which we both have both energies. So it's not a men don't, women don't. It's just
Right.
like to understand that it's something that is, yeah, allowing yourself to be open. And it's in that in itself already, being open is a very vulnerable thing. It feels for people very vulnerable to be open. So like, whoa, if I'm open, like then anyone can, just punch me, and then I'm falling over. So it's that, like the word allowing, which is a synonym for me for receiving. It's all like the openness, the allowing yourself to tune into the flow.
Right. It's very, very cool. So, do you have an example of your personal experience of maybe entering into flow state that you want to talk about? Maybe give better idea of the state of being flow.
Mhm. It's I would say I live in flow state. It's not something necessarily that I enter, or it's more that I recognize when I'm moving out of it. And
Right.
it's when emotions, like for example, like fear arises and wants to take me, my mind wants to take me on a little story and like directs its own movie, and it's like, hold on,
Hmm.
come back. This is right now your mind trying to create a story. And to also understand that the mind does that because it wants to protect us. So it's also meeting myself and my mind with compassion of like, oh, my mind is creating a story, da da da. But like, no, it's actually, it tries, because the unknown feels for the mind like a scary place. but the unknown is actually just another word for possibility. And so for me, it's, I would say, because I've practiced it for so long that it's like it's become like it's my nature. But of course there were like times in my life where it wasn't like that, and especially the big decisions, for example, me moving to LA. So I was living in Berlin. I was working at Netflix at that time, and I could just feel that this wasn't right, absolutely not right anymore. It didn't resonate. And so there my intuition came in and was like, okay, Kyra, so what about LA? Because it has been around for me for a longer time. Will you ever gonna do this? And for me to allow that to happen, like just this like piece of information that definitely scared me, of like, I did not know what would come from this, all of it. And to allow myself to stay in the present moment, because like the move, I mean, you may or may not imagine like selling my entire life without, also I did consciously make the decision not to move with Netflix. I could have also done that, like see if I can just transfer to the LA office or so, and to not do that, but really say no, that this does also not feel right. This doesn't feel like the way for me. And then the amount of obviously things that came from this. Okay, so I need to sell my entire life. I need to find an apartment. I need to my visa. All of like so many things, and to stay in the present moment and really like hold on, one step at a time, and that also trusting that when you are following your intuition, the flow is taking you. So suddenly doors open and things happen. I can say that, for example, I mean, I moved to LA without as coming from a foreign country, I didn't have a credit score, which is something I learned is very essential in the United States, right? So okay, so here I am, and I don't have credit score. My visa wasn't even in my passport at that time. It was last year in November, and I came to LA, and there was an intuitive moment. I don't even remember this, and like I was here for a month, and at the end, I like on my last night, I think I started like, okay, maybe let's just have a look at the apartment market so I get a feeling for what maybe is there or not available for me probably. And I saw this apartment that I'm sitting in, and I just was the only apartment. I wrote them, hey, yeah, so be interested. The next day I'm getting an email, hey, do you want to come by in an hour? I'm like, okay. Like I didn't even have time. It didn't like, but I just followed it.
Right.
I was at the viewing, and I could feel this is my apartment. So I'm talking to the what is it called, the real estate agent, and also, so here I am. So hey, yeah, great, I love the apartment, but here's the story. I don't have a credit score, and also like, like there's a lot of things that my mind would be like, this makes no sense. Like this is not gonna. But following that led to that they even held the apartment for 3 months for me. And everybody that I'm telling is like, this is unheard of. Like here, nobody, don't hold anything, not just even for a minute, kind of.
Right.
But following that and trusting that, and that's what I meant with it doesn't make sense. I didn't have time to go to the viewing. It didn't make sense in the middle of the night to like, look, I didn't have, like, all the things, all the reasons why this doesn't make sense. And yet I did it. And that's where then the flow is like, no, come. It's like, it's showing you, like, it gives you your intuition is like, come here. I want to make it easy. That's also one thing that so many people don't get, that life wants to make life very easy for us. But we're all running in these, like, running into closed doors and forcing things. It's like, no, just follow where it feels easy. And so for me, to practice that and really surrender to, because that is another thing to surrender to, because you might very well, like, if you have a business, it's something that I've experienced myself, where I'm like, I maybe had an idea in mind where I'm going to take this and how this is going to unfold, but to really let go of all the story. That's a mantra that I sometimes tell myself: drop the story, any story, just drop it and allow the story to unfold. And then this is where the magic happens, because like life pulls off stories like no one can come up. Like this is just where you're like, what? I can't believe this. So I have many examples of that, but that was maybe one that makes it a bit more tangible.
I love it. And it's very inspiring to me. I've gone through many changes the last few years, similar to you. I had to basically change my career, shut down a business, sell
Hmm.
off a business, and
Hmm.
restart, and it's scary. But
Yeah.
there are points where, you know, uh, yeah, I just have to follow with the flow. And sometimes I'm not making the progress that I want to make, but that's my mind saying, you know, being adding that fear that I don't
Yeah.
need. And if I just listen to the flow, listen to my intuition, and
And
just
maybe one thing to add is also to understand that the flow has its own pace. So it's us yet again where we feel like, oh, and flow, and then everything happens like fast and blah. The flow is like sometimes suddenly it takes you on a ride and just like things happen like very quickly and instantaneously almost.
yeah,
But sometimes it's also like asking you to that it feels like almost like, am I standing still right now? Like where you feel like, is there any flow happening?
right,
So it really is like, but that is it is also the flow really taking care of us to make sure that we also have these moments of reflection, of regeneration, recharge, to really like be, hold on, maybe there's a moment when things are really slow. Life is making sure that, hey, maybe you want to sit down and check in right now if what you're doing is really in flow and in alignment. So really like giving us this opportunity to see like, oh, when things right now are not happening, where, what am I doing? What, like having a look, it's giving us the space. And this is like seeing, it's yet again a choosing the perspective, like when you lose your job or when things don't happen the way that you want them to really turn it around. It's like, why is this happening for me? What's in here? Like life wants me to
yeah,
see something, wants to give me something. And it's up to me to just yeah, open my eyes and look for what I want to see, like look for it, like, okay. And then yeah, this is how life always tries to get us into back into the flow. Even when it makes us, especially when it makes us so very uncomfortable.
right.
This is life like, you're very, very off track. Come back into the flow.
We have a tendency, life happens to us. If we just shift that word from
Yeah.
2 to 4, everything changes. The
Yeah.
perspective of life changes and allows us, could allow us to enter the flow state and have
it's
a better
it's
life.
the being in your power. It's like literally, instead of like, if it's happening to me, I'm like completely disempowered, like I can't do anything. I'm like, but if it's happening for me, I also have a relationship with life that is, life is good, life wants
Yeah,
good things for me. It
right,
doesn't want me to, like this idea that life wants to make things hard, as I said earlier, right? Or like that I need to struggle, and it's all like, no,
yeah.
this is not what life wants. It wants us to really flow with it and evolve. But we've, yeah,
We,
created also systems that not necessarily are favoring evolution
yeah.
in some ways.
I
So
think
yeah,
we gain control over our life by letting go of control, which is
exactly.
hard for
Yeah.
people to digest. It's
Then,
not how we were raised, but
yeah,
in reality, it's the best course of action.
exactly that. It's really letting go, like control is, or power is not being in control.
Right.
That's it. It's if you really understand that and like start to live from that, that it's not being in control,
Yeah.
um then suddenly life becomes a whole different experience,
Yeah.
a very flowy one.
A very fluent.
And you're up for a ride.
Yeah, and I'm definitely up for the ride. You've given me a lot to ponder, a lot to think about. You've taught me a lot, and as you said, it's challenging to implement a lot of these things. It takes time; doesn't happen
Yeah,
overnight. It's a process. You got to, be present with your emotions and really work towards getting to that flow state. And once you get to that flow state, you're going to get challenged. You're going to have to reflect and get back into it. So you've taught me a lot, and that's the purpose of the podcast, right? Life doesn't come with a manual. It doesn't tell you what to do, but it's important for us to just kind of go with the flow and learn along the way. That being said, what is one thing that you'd like to teach the world? What is one thing you want to teach? It doesn't have to be related to flow state.
it kind of is. I want the world to really understand that being is a practice, and that it is the necessary counterpart to doing. That when we start to understand that in being is something of immense value, um, that is, I think, where we really get back into that balance that we see currently also reflected in our world is not present. So adding that and understanding that being is not being productive, it's quite the opposite. So for people to really be more and understand that this is something, it's a dynamic state, and it's something that it's a decision also to do, kind of do being, if you want to say so. That is something that I really hope more people implement into their lives and see the
power of it.
it's who we are. We are human beings.
Yeah.
And to not forget that, but live and embody that more.
Yeah. Slow it down.
Exactly.
So is there a book that maybe inspired you or impacted your life in any way?
There's
A ton, I'm sure.
so many.
There one that
I'll just, like, the flow takes me right now to say Young Pueblo is a great teacher of mine. Like, all of his books, I think Clarity and Connection was his first one, I'm not sure. Lighter, and I think there's his next book is just about to come out. Like, he's someone that I very much enjoy reading, and his reflections and resonate a lot. So very, very a clear way of putting things, and very insightful.
I'm excited to check that out. So
Cool.
last question for you. How
Yeah.
can people follow you or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I think the best way would be to meet me on my coaching studios. So Being Studios. So on Instagram, it's being.studios, and beingstudios.com. This is where you can find me.
Hey, Kyra, I had so much flow. I mean, I had so much fun in the flow, I should say.
Great.
And I think
Same.
I know that this topic will resonate with a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to hear the feedback of people listening.
Yeah,
I'm
me
excited
too.
to implement this stuff. I mean, a lot of us, I mean, even if we knew about flow state, we knew how to get, we forget that we can get there. We forget the benefits of getting to flow state, and
Yeah.
how we can improve our lives, live better quality lives. And I appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Take care. I want to remind everybody, like, follow, and share. Help us spread the word. Take care.